Thank you for inviting me along. As Liz was saying, we won the Excellence Award, so we're very chuffed with ourselves. That was just in this year, and there was many hurdles to go through to get into that point. But Homelink as an organisation, so we started in 1986 in south of Edinburgh, and it was originated because there was a group of professionals that come together and identified there was lots of young vulnerable mums who were lone parents with preschool children who really struggled with day-to-day life, and what we thought that we would look at was some sort of informal support, and hence why the befriending service started. Then, due to funding opportunities, we expanded into the whole of the south of Edinburgh, and in the last 15 years we've been in Midlothian, which is just on the outskirts of Edinburgh. So we offer many things, but we deliver a befriending service to the whole family, which makes us quite unique in that respect. Our matches are time limited for a year. We have 5 staff working part-time related to befriending. We're really fortunate. We've got a volunteer recruitment officer. I manage the service and deal with the reporting and funding and then liaison with that. And then we've got 3 project workers that are geographically located, so we're quite fortunate. It's not one person having to do it all. In terms of capacity, so we can support up to 48 families at any one time between Edinburgh and Midlothian, which leads to 300 children in a year can benefit from that support. Due to funding and the service growing, we moved on 8 years ago to offer systemic family therapy out in Midlothian, and it's a service that we also want to bring into Edinburgh, but funding at the moment does not permit that. But that complements the befriending service really well, and due to capacity and the demand for the befriending service in Midlothian, we offer group work as well. And recently, in December of last year, we were awarded an 18-month funding through Edinburgh Council and EVOC, an antenatal befriending service. So really, the befriending service is going to be focusing on parents who are 22 weeks pregnant, offering them allocated befriender and who will remain with them until the baby is 6 months old. And we're just really building upon this after our experience of mainstream befriending. As I said, we awarded the Quality Award in 13, and then we had about 5 indicators, so we needed more work. So we thought, what the heck, let's just go for it. And then we went and got the excellence. So our service focuses on, for the befriending, focuses on children who are under 5. So as long as the families have children under 5, they can access the support. And the befriending, it can be really varied. So sometimes we're supporting the parents, and sometimes we're actually supporting the children themselves. What we did to get the process started, so we developed a small task and finish group of 4 staff, and this is 4 staff who were all doing our daytime jobs, and this was something else in addition, coming together, and we assigned each of us a specific section. So the indicators that were around recruitment and selection, our volunteer officer took that. Anything that was involved in support supervision of our volunteers, our project workers who managed the befriending matches, they took that. So we tried to divvy up anything that was to do with policies. I was the lucky person that got that. Anything to do with funding, that fell to me as well. So my part wasn't that glamorous. However, the rest of it seemed to be okay. We set deadlines and reported back and reviewed the evidence, and it was very much on a month-to-month basis. We tried to get together and just to do a progress report. And if anybody was really struggling, then and someone else had capacity, then we would try and jump in and share the workload out. We had a lot in place as an organisation, having been around for, at that time, 26 years, but a lot of stuff was out of date. The policies hadn't been recently reviewed, so there was all these things that we had to do before we even got to being able to submit the indicators, and also to gather enough evidence. And also a lot of time was developing paperwork, because we worked in 2 geographical locations. Then we needed to ensure there was consistency, so whoever who was getting befriending support in Midlothian, the families in South of Edinburgh were getting exactly the same, even though it was being delivered by 2 different staff members. So we consulted a lot with our volunteers and with families before introducing and implementing paperwork. We felt this was a really important process just to bring our volunteers on board, and also to get direct feedback from our families, because we wanted it to be a meaningful working tools that we were using. We started off, like John said, producing hard copy, and it was a nightmare, so please start off doing everything electronically, because you lost your thread on so many times, and actually the transferring of the hard copy into the folder, which ended up being 3 folders. I remember giving them to Sandra on that day, and I was like, here you are. So electronic copy is the way to go, and cross-referencing, it just took ages to do. So my advice would be to get someone else to do that for you as well. Not you, no. A willing volunteer. So the work involved, so like I said, 4 staff members. It was 6 months initially to pull everything together for the first, what we thought were in the first submission. And as I said before, we were doing it in addition to our main role. Then there was a final month to carry the review out and evidence the indicators, and transferring the evidence and making sure it was cross-referencing with the front covers. And yeah, that was just a thankless task. Sorry, it was though. There was a slight gap because there was change of personnel at our end, but also preventing networking, and us after we'd made our initial submission of getting the feedback. And then we did get the feedback that we had to resubmit several pieces of evidence, so that took a little bit more time. So lessons learned, yeah, need lots of time to factor in, and I think if I was to do it again, it would be making it part of people's individual work plans, so that they were maybe having a reduced caseload to allow them to spend time on this. And we would try to do all the sections at the same time, and my advice would be maybe to do a section at a time, because we spread ourselves too thinly. It was good to have small working groups, because then we're able to review each other's submissions and the evidence, and do that self-analysis and critiquing. And to have all the procedures written up, because so much, even though we'd evolved and been around for so long at that time, a lot of stuff was written in people's, or kept in people's heads, and there wasn't enough written down. So it was great to consolidate and have all that. Benefits. All the procedures are clear, and it's fantastic for inducting new staff and new volunteers. It makes things so much easier now. All our volunteers now, they fed back, they feel really valued. Before we went for Quib, we were seeing our volunteers 3 months for face-to-face, and then the odd phone call in between, but actually every month now there's a contact made with them, and they're feeling really, really supported and valued as a result of that. And like I mentioned before, there's consistency now across, so I feel confident whatever's happening in Midlothian, exactly the same is happening in Edinburgh as well. Our funders have been really impressed, and they feel reassured that we've undertaken an external audit. We've had various other external awards over the existence of the organisation, and because we don't get inspected by the Care Inspectorate, so there's not another independent national regulatory body that's coming in, so we have been really proactive to making sure that prevention is seen as a professional service. So we are really confident in our processes, and our policies are in place, and they're reviewed on an annual basis, and we have a policy and compliance subgroup now that lead that. Staff and volunteers and families are really clear. What we found was that everyone knew how to get into the service, but nobody was really clear about how they managed to exit, so that pathway of coming in and coming out of the service is really clear for volunteers and for our families. And at the same time as we were undertaking this, we were also improving our monitoring and evaluation tools as well, so the two complement each other really well. So we feel that as an organisation now, that all the different steps in place to offer quality prevention service are all really well in place, and our funders now we're able to report back on any updating of audits that we've undertaken, and so they're really appreciative of that as well, especially in times when funding is really difficult to obtain. I feel that as a befriending service, we really constantly have to up our game to make sure that we stand out from everybody else, and the befrienders recognise for the value that we've got.